So hello, my friends. Devon Lennox here, PhotographyPX. Welcome. In today's video, we're going to show you guys how to extend a backdrop in Adobe Photoshop. All right, so here we are in Adobe Photoshop. Photo's already loaded up. This is going to be the photo that we're working on today. So let me come back into full screen, go over to tab. Let me show you guys the before and after so you can see what we're working on here today. So this is the original image, and that's how we extended it. Original extension, original extension. Okay, so let's delete that so I can show you guys how we're gonna end up doing that in Adobe Photoshop. So first things first, once you have your photo loaded up, you're gonna duplicate the background layer so you have a copy of your actual image. So right click on here, duplicate layer. We're gonna just leave it as a default name, that's cool. The next thing what you're going to do is you're going to go over here to your selection tools and you're going to select the rectangular marquee tool. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be selecting from the bottom of the frame all the way to the top of the frame using the rectangular marquee tool, and then we're going to use the direct selection tool to basically drag it over to make it bigger. Essentially what this technique is doing, it's dragging and it's elongating the pixels that you're selecting using the rectangular marquee tool. And that has, we'll talk about some tips of what that does, but suffice it to say that's what we're doing. So I'm going to go down from the bottom of the frame, and you're just going to see me go to the top of the frame, and we're going to go up here, and you're going to get as close to the edge of the backdrop as possible, so you get as wide of a selection as possible. What you're going to do next is we're going to do Command or Control T to open up our transform window, and we're going to drag the middle of the prong, this prong here, and we're going to drag that out to the edge of the frame and hit Enter. The next thing you're going to do is deselect your marquee, so that's Command or Control D, and that's going to undo the selection. So that's the technique. That's literally all we're doing here to do the extension. I'll show you guys the next one too, and then we'll talk about some tips and tricks and things to keep in mind when you're doing this technique, because it does have some trade-offs. Unfortunately, there's definitely some trade-offs. It's not all kisses and rainbows here with doing this technique. There's definitely some things you have to fix as you're working with this technique, but suffice it to say that is how we do that in one simple tool. So same thing that we're going to be doing on this side. We're going to drag from the bottom of the frame. I'm going to drag from down here, and then try not to hit the model's, the subject's feet or their shoes or their hair or whatever, because it's also going to grab those pixels and elongate them as well. Command T, and then we're going to drag. Boom, and then hit Enter. And you can just tap on the outside of the image to deselect, or do Command D or Control D. Let me zoom out for you guys a little bit here so we can get a better eagle's eye view of what we're doing. So before and after. Okay, so I'm gonna walk you guys through some of the tips that you're gonna need to look into when you're doing this. So first and foremost, when we do that extension, we're elongating the pixels is literally what we're doing using the transform tool. So with that, you'll kind of notice that these areas over here. Let me actually open up another layer, and I'll use the brush tool so you guys can follow along with what I'm doing here. You notice that these areas over here, this entire area got like really stretched out. If we kind of zoom in, unfortunately with the background textures, it depends on the resolution of the image, but a lot of the time you'll get these like kind of weird streakings. So compare that right over there to the backdrop over here. You'll notice that the texture is just has this kind of like fine noise grain, but as we go over on this side, it just gets a lot longer. It may be a little bit hard to see on this blue, but essentially it gets long and stretched out. Depending on the backdrop that you're extending, that's sometimes more obvious than not. The biggest thing that I'm noticing first and foremost here is the wrinkles. The wrinkles got stretched out. This is not a tutorial on how to necessarily fix uneven backdrops or anything like that. I will be doing a video right after this one on how to do that in Adobe Photoshop, but suffice it to say, you will need to fix all of this stuff here. And there's techniques on how to fix that, but that's something to look at when you're doing this extension. Another thing that sometimes happens when you're doing the extension is that Photoshop is pretty good with making sure when you do the extension, it blends it accordingly. but sometimes you can see kind of a line. As I'm zooming out, you can kind of see there's a line right here in terms of the difference of luminosity. There's kind of a gradation in terms of lightness, that you can see a harsh line where it's like bright over here and then it's dark over on this side. That's something you're also going to need to watch out and fix when you're using this technique as well. Outside of that, it's pretty much seamless. It works pretty well. You don't really need to watch out for anything else. Those are going to be the big things that you need to watch out for when you're using this technique. So I will give you some tips on making sure if you're going to shoot on smaller Savage seamless background paper, say for example the 5-foot roll instead of the 7 or 9 or 12-foot roll, making sure that the model has a lot of space, negative space around them, him or her. And the main reason you want to do that is because if you're going to use this technique to then, extend the background to get a full background in your image, you want to make sure that it's easier for you to do that in post-production than not. If the model is like their elbows or their hands or their legs are coming off the background into the actual environment. So say for example, right, if I duplicate this and I come right here, use the brush tool, and well, I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller. So say for example the model was actually over here, they had little shoes on, little shoes here, and she was doing the whole leg thing with the arms, and then the head was here. But say all of this entire part of the model was out on the backdrop, or was outside of the backdrop, you'd have to use a selection tool to then basically paint the whole backdrop over there. You would not be able to use this tool. So the key thing is, if you're going to use this technique, make sure the model is inside of the backdrop. So make sure the model is roughly in this area right here, and that there's a lot of negative space on each side, on this side, and there's a lot of negative space on this side. So that when you do the extension, you can just grab this area right here and extend it all the way over to here, and then you can grab this area right here, and then same thing, extend it all the way over here, and it doesn't even touch your model or your subject. That is the thing that I had to learn the hard way. So I would love to make sure that as a tip for you guys, so you guys don't make that same mistake. Using these smaller backdrops is definitely a huge advantage because they are way cheaper. This is like $30 per roll. Fantastic. They're super cheap compared to some of the bigger ones, which are $70 to $100 per roll. So this is what I was shooting on for a very long time. So and this is kind of how I ended up figuring out how, this is one technique, but this is how I was extending backdrops in Photoshop. So that kind of wraps up today's video and things of that nature. I hope that added some value to you guys, and I hope that was a technique that maybe you didn't really hear about and stuff like that, but it's an easy technique to extend backdrops in Adobe Photoshop. Super easy, one simple tool, takes 30 seconds per side, super easy. So I hope that added some value to you guys. If you're new here, please consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. Leave us a like and a comment in the description. Let us know if I missed anything, or you have any specific questions, and I'd love to answer those in the comments down below. Outside of that, hey, keep it locked in on our channel. We got some great content coming soon. This is Devon Lennox, PhotographyPX, and we'll see you next time. Peace out.